Okay, so now we're going to get into multiplying complex numbers. And there's a couple things I want everybody to be aware of when we're going to be getting to our examples of complex numbers. First of all, we know that complex numbers takes in the form of a plus bi, right? And if I was going to multiply that by another complex number, let's call it c plus di, all right? By using our multiplication property, we could apply FOIL. And remember, FOIL makes sure that we apply our distributive property to each and every one of our terms. And we're going to get more into depth on how to apply FOIL and so forth. But that's just an example of our multiplying terms. But when we're multiplying complex numbers, there's a really important point that we need to make sure. One is understanding, again, our imaginary unit. So we have I. That's going to help us create our complex number. Remember, I represents the square root of -1. That's our imaginary unit. Now, if I was going to do I times I, then we know that that's going to be the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. Well, the square root of -1 times the square root of -1, that equals the square root of -1 squared. And we know that the square and the square root, that just equals -1. So it's really important for us to understand that I times I, which is I squared, is equivalent to -1. And we're going to come up to this at quite a bit of times when we're dealing with multiplying complex numbers, because when we multiply bi times di, that's going to end up leaving us with I squared, which we can rewrite as a -1. So there's going to be a lot of different ways. We'll have complex numbers, or we'll have a number multiplied by a complex number, and we'll apply distributive property, c plus or c times a plus bi. We're going to make sure we have to remember how to apply distributive property. We're going to use FOIL and a whole bunch of different ways. But the main important thing I want you to understand is when we take in our imaginary unit, when we have I squared, that's going to represent -1. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is a brief little overview of multiplying complex numbers. Thanks.